Today I was gazing at my bookshelf, looking at all the fantasy and sci-fi series that I have. I was looking at Lord of the Rings. I'm still missing one of the books. I want a very specific cover, so I don't have all of the Lord of the Rings books. I've got a good amount of the Game of Thrones books, and I also have this right here. The Sword of Shannara trilogy. This was given to me by my mother. Now, guys, this video, don't tell my mom about it. To my knowledge, she doesn't know about what happened to this franchise. And we're not going to tell her, okay? We're going to let her live blissfully unaware of the fact that this was picked up by a station that had no business picking it up. A company that had no business taking on a fantasy project, okay? When you think Sci-Fi Channel, you think Stargate, you think Battlestar Galactica, stuff like that, because it's science fiction, right? That makes sense, all right? You've got companies that took on Lord of the Rings, did it pretty well. HBO, pretty good with fantasy series, as long as you've got the right people helming it. Guys, don't ever hire the people that are really bad at that stuff. But the Sword of Shannara met with just such a tragic fate, because the company, for those of you that don't know, because I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that this was adapted into a series, this is a major fantasy novel series. I cannot stress this enough. And it was picked up by MTV. Seriously, I'm just imagining the look on Terry Brooks's face when it was announced to him who picked it up. He was all excited, like, oh yeah, finally, I'm going to get my stuff adapted. I'm finally going to get this fantastic fantasy novel series put onto the screen. It's going to follow in the footsteps of Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, all of them. And it's going to be phenomenal. What was that? Oh, you're telling me MTV, music television, has picked up my fantasy series? Great, yeah. What could possibly go wrong? A lot went wrong. A lot went wrong. It went so horribly, in fact, which is not shocking at all, because again, it's a music channel. It's a channel geared towards music. It'd be equally bad if VH1 picked it up for whatever reason. Do those channels even exist anymore? I genuinely don't recall. But it went so poorly that it lasted one season. And then they moved on, and they tried. They had Jon Favreau executive producing some of these. They did. They had an okay cast list. Like, the actors were pretty good. Honestly, I didn't think it was awful. I thought it had potential. They dropped it one season in, but hope was not lost, guys. I want you to know there was a glimmer of hope, because where MTV failed, Spike TV stepped in to take on the mantle. And let me tell you, it was just as bad. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I'm astounded. I don't get how they could have not just one of the worst possible channels to pick up something like this, but two of them back to back. And they released these seasons fast. As soon as that thing was dropped, Spike TV picked it back up and was like, oh yeah, baby, let's do this. We got a hit. Instant. There's no way this could possibly fail. It was absolutely riding on the coattails of Game of Thrones, because it was 2016 to 2017 that the two seasons aired. And, right around that time, Game of Thrones was still insanely big. So they really thought that they had a cash grab, but it just went to show that's not always the case. We've come to know that isn't the case even for Game of Thrones. If it's bad, if it's not in the right place, if it's not made by the right people for the right audience, it's just not going to be great, okay? We're just lucky that Spike TV didn't pick it up back in 2001, because 50% of the shots would have had boobs in them, and they would have recast Samuel L. Jackson into one of the roles. They would have just added a samurai into it for no reason whatsoever. So I guess that there's silver linings. It could have been worse. I'm talking to you, Terry Brooks, now. You personally, bud, who's on the book here, you could get away with just trying again. Everything's kind of mellowed out. Fantasy, maybe wait a little bit, because fantasy is kind of overhyping itself again. We've got Rings of Power struggling along. There's more Lord of the Rings stuff coming out. And in addition to that, there's just a lot. They're doing more House of Dragons. Like they're trying to keep Game of Thrones going. But somewhere in there, like in the middle of it all, I think that you could revive this. I think that this is a fantastic series that has so much potential to it. It's not just this trilogy of books. There are a lot of novels. Terry Brooks is still alive, so he could consult on it. He could do a really good job making sure that it's good. Just make sure a worthy company takes it on. Oh my gosh. I think that should go without saying. Don't have VH1 pick it up next, okay? If Comedy Central picks this up, if I hear that they've revived it, they're doing a season 3 and Comedy Central is picking it up, Terry Brooks, I'm going to punch you in the face. That's not a threat. You'll know full well that you'll deserve it. So, frankly, it's just your just dues. That's what it'll be if something like that occurs. But I think that this needs to be I've picked this book up like 50 times in this video. I'm sorry, that has to be kind of annoying to watch. It's a heavy book. This book is thick. It's 3 books in one, so I'm not really surprised. But there is so much lore in this franchise. It's a neat story. I read some of it. I've not read all of it. I'm not as good with books as I used to be, but I did watch both seasons, and I thought they were bearable. I thought they were interesting, even though they were made by companies that had no business making stuff like this. It was still watchable to me. But obviously, it wasn't going to hit the demographic that it needed to hit. Nobody's getting on MTV to watch the Shannara Chronicles. Okay? That's just not what MTV was made for. It's the same case with Spike TV. No one's getting on Spike TV and watching a fantasy series. That's not what they're there for. I'm not positive that Spike TV even exists anymore. Honestly, I'm going to have to check. Okay, no, Spike TV no longer exists. It was just rebranded as Paramount Network. It was just absorbed into its parent network, which is just funny. And it happened in 2018, not too long after the Shannara Chronicles failed. So that makes it a little funnier. Honestly, I'm kind of glad. I like to think that maybe that show failing caused it to be resorbed into the parent company. I like to think that's going to be in my headcanon from now on. But I also learned something a bit funnier. All right. Paramount Network owned Spike TV. And it also owned MTV, which meant that they didn't cancel the Shannara Chronicles on MTV and then Spike TV picked it up. Paramount Network, who owns more than just those 2 channels and do in fact own channels that would be more appropriate to have something like that on, made the unilateral decision, no. Guys, MTV, that's not the right channel. And everybody in the, meetings just like, oh, yes. That's correct, obviously. I don't know what we were thinking there. Yes. But where would we put it then? Obviously, Spike TV. And then everybody just cheers. Like, ignoring the better choices that it could have possibly had. But if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Paramount Network also own Comedy Central? I'm going to check that now. Paramount does own Comedy Central. Which means that this is not a 0% possibility. Like, there is a non-zero chance that Comedy Central could just host season 3 of the Shannara Chronicles. So I'm reiterating, don't do that. Do not do that. And I mean it. Guys, please do it again. Do the Shannara Chronicles again. Just call it the Sword of Shannara. You don't have to call it the Shannara Chronicles. I just sounded Australian for a second there. I do apologize for that. Sorry to the Australians. I don't mean to say that that's something to apologize for. I'm going off the rails here. It's very late. It's my bedtime. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up by saying, guys, just redo it. Just start over from scratch. Put it on a network that it belongs on. Okay? It's doable. It could be good. The Shannara Chronicles, aka the Sword of Shannara, needs to be made again. It deserves it. Okay? That way I could show my mommy and she can love it. And then will believe for the rest of her life that it was the only iteration attempted to be made. And then when she dies and goes to heaven, God will tell her the truth and she'll just be mad at me. But that's fine. She'll be dead. Hopefully I won't be yet. Okay. That's the end of the video, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think. Did you watch it? Let me know. I'm genuinely curious to know if you've watched the Shannara Chronicles. Tell me what you thought of that for sure. Just thoughts on a remake, and watch this video here. It's catered to your personal enjoyment, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.